Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great. Anyone need a stretch, a wake up, coffee? All right. Well, again, my name's Joe Murphy. It's my privilege to lead the talented and energetic safety and environmental team at Shell that supports our deepwater wells operations and our intent and ever-going implementation of SEMS. First of all, I'd like to thank the COS for this forum. What a great opportunity to come, share, and learn. I wish we could do these more often. Also, the opportunity to reconnect with colleagues. In my 35 years in the industry, I've met some of the best people, some of my trusted advisors, my mentors in symposiums and workshops like this. So when Russ said, take the opportunity to meet the people to your left and to your right, do that. It pays dividends, believe me. What I'd like to share today is a program we've been working on and implementing in our deepwater wells operations for the past couple of years, and it's simply called Job by Design. And it's really a co-creation of not only Shell, but our partners, our contractors, our customers. In my time, I've found that the programs that we've built collaboratively, not only with an operator, but our contractors, our suppliers, works the best. And this is a product of that collaboration. This is not a Shell program but in of itself. It's something we identified with our partners, we worked together with our partners, and we've seen value in its implementation over the last couple of years. So if you bear with me, I'm going to try to share that program with you. And I'll first start off by giving you a little bit of background on how we came to this. So in 2019, Shell undertook what we called a refresh approach to our safety. And in that little wheel there in that diagram, you can see a number of programs in there that we have done to reinvigorate, refresh our approach to safety. And I'm not going to dive into those. That's not the intent of this conversation. But Russ talked about and touched on a little bit early in his comments was the underpinning theme of our refreshed approach at Shell was to focus on human performance. In my 30 years prior to that, I tried to build the perfect employee, give them the perfect procedure, the perfect training, the perfect equipment to have zero errors, zero error performance. Never got there. All this gray hair, gray beard, that's all those failures over that time. And what we came to realize, which we should have learned a long time ago, and I think we're all here now, is humans will make errors. We're prone to make errors, right? And oftentimes, and most times, it's not lack of care, it's their malicious errors. Our folks on the front line are trying their best every day to do the job right. How often, as Russ talked about, there's latent failures in our systems that often drive them to error-inducing conditions. Right? They're out there trying to figure out, what is it you really want? What does it really mean? Do I really remember what the training I got? Right? They're trying their best to do it. And so what we've got to step back and do as an industry, as an operator at Shell, is give them the best opportunity to succeed, all right? The second part of that is we have to build into our systems depth and defense. We have to allow them to fail, right? So when they do fail, it doesn't end up in a catastrophic event to themselves, to the environment, to our assets, right? So we want to build depth and defense, give them the opportunity, build our systems of, hey, if they make a mistake, it doesn't result. So that's what we focus on. And all those wagon wheel things there are things we've worked on in Shell Pro processes. But as we sat with our partners, and I went through numerous causal investigations, unfortunately we still have to do incident investigations, opportunity to learn. As we did looking at our assurance activities, conversations with our frontline supervisors, our frontline workers, our business partners, and you'll see a list of human performance failures or reasons for human performance issues, right? And none of these are going to be, earth-shattering to you. I mean, you're all going to look at these, and I hope I see a lot of nodding heads, right? But really, we're talking about procedural work instructions. Variations in quality of those puts people in a tough place. They're out there looking at a procedure doesn't match with the work they're doing. They're trying to figure out it's outdated, or it's written to a language they don't understand. They have to make decisions in time. Hey, how do I apply this procedure? It's operationalization of that procedure. People saying, well, yeah, this ain't the way I've done it in the past, but I'm comfortable with the way I've done it. Hey, I'm going to skip a few steps here, I'm going to skip a few steps there. So how do they operationalize even a well-done procedure varies. Task accountabilities. Who's responsible to do what? We see confusion, misunderstanding, shared accountabilities where it shouldn't be shared. Competency. The presentation Andrew gave, a great opportunity for us to improve competency on the process safety side. Okay? And communication, how we transition to work. So those are some of the common failures or opportunities we saw to enhance and human performance. And then failing safely. In my career, we always continue to struggle with risk identification and mitigation, giving our people the tools to understand what are the risks I'm facing and how do I properly mitigate those. And also our focus has always been more on prevention versus recovery. So we spend a lot of time going to tell them what to do not to have an incident, not enough time talking about, well, if it does happen, how can you position yourself and what should you do to prevent the mitigation, to mitigate it, to have the least amount of effect as possible, right? All right, so with all that being said, we sat with our business partners saying, how can we improve in this area in addition to all those programs you see on that list there? And what we simply came up with was someone mentioned in a contractor forum we were hosting at Shell's, why can't we design our jobs better? Why can't we give a tool to the front line that brings all these things you're talking about that really helps the frontline worker, giving them an opportunity to succeed, to be less error prone? And so we termed this topic job by design. And where we thought we could attack the best was when we started our transition to work. So we're really talking about our toolbox talk. We call it transition to work, or step 7 conversation in Shell language. And so we have a format by which we do our toolbox talks. It's a 7-step process. Again, that's not the intent of this conversation, talk about the 7-step process. But the first start in that 7-step process is you talk about the plan. What is the plan? What is it we want to do today? What is this job? And we found that the quality of that plan is what everything else hinges on. So if you don't have a quality plan, when you talk about communication of that plan, when you talk about the equipment checks, when you talk about competency checks, energy checks, if the plan's not solid, the rest of that is weak. So we said, all right, we're going to focus on our transition to work, we're going to focus on the plan. So we came up with what we call a job by design work plan. And basically what it is, it's a 1-page job plan that goes ahead and it's used during a pre-job transition or toolbox talk. It pulls from the approved work procedure, and it pulls the key critical steps, the execution steps, assigns accountability, and it also talks about the other part about failing safely, about people movement. So not only are we talking about the steps, who does them, but where should you be when you do those steps. It's a guidance document in support of the procedure. It's not the procedure. It's developed, this job by design 1 page is developed by the crews that use them. So it's not set in New Orleans or Houston and emailed offshore. The blank template goes offshore and the crews, they're the ones that develop them. It utilizes a standard template, so they become familiar to the work crews. They get used to this is the way we do our plan. It's company, our contractor, it's rig, and work site specific, right? So we don't dictate everything. We, again, a partnership with our contractors. They can modify the template to meet their management system, to meet their language, and meet their culture. But it is a standard template that we agree on at the end. And execution of this work plan requires procedural discipline. We don't deviate it from unless there's formal deviation processes in place that have been established. Okay? So that's what the job by design is in theory. So what's it look like in reality? And I'm not sure you can see that there on the right, but I'll walk through it. So that is the 1-page template, right? So this is a template that we use for running riser. And it's really not the content that you need to see, it's really just the concept that I'm trying to get across. So on the left-hand column here, and I don't know if I have a laser, I think I do. So on the left-hand column right here, these are the critical action steps. So from the running riser procedure, the approved procedure, the crews go through and identify in order the critical steps that they undertake to execute that job. With those tasks, with those steps are assigned accountabilities, right? So that is the plan, the work step plan. In there we'll also identify critical hold points, where we need verification for calculations or to make sure a proper lineup of something. So that where there's verification points or hold points, those are identified in there. Next, they go ahead and we assign who's involved in this operation. So we specifically say what jobs, how many, and what their roles are, roles and responsibilities. This does one thing, it sets expectations, accountabilities. It's very clear on who's responsible to do what. It also helps us establish manpower. In my career, many times you have 7 men on the drill floor. It's a 3-man job. You have 7 men up on the drill floor. 7 men are going to want to do, or women are want to do work. Oftentimes, the incidents we've experienced in my career are to people that weren't required to be on the floor, right? So this really helps us establish what are our staffing, our manning requirements per job. It also frees us up to get the most utilization out of those work crews, right? So if we only require 6 people to do this job, the other people can go work somewhere else or help somewhere else, right? So here we're very clear on accountabilities, who's responsibilities for execution of these steps. The next part about it, in the part where we really get around failing safely and risk identification and mitigation, is we map out movement per the steps. So we talk about where do people stand, where do they move for steps, and we're really looking to de-risk the operation here. We're looking to say, where is the line of fire risks? Where do people need to be? Where are the stand-back zones? Where are emergency exits, right? So we really try to coordinate the activities and where people were at to make this as an operation from a line of fire and safety standpoint as safe as possible, right? Okay, so we talked about the job steps, personnel positioning, the number of personnel required. Down here we also have a little bit of cheat sheet here for acronyms. So we're still the oil industry, and unfortunately acronyms make it the whole way to the rig floor, right? So we may have to help them in some points with acronyms. We also reference other procedures that may play in this. So really this becomes a 1-page play for the roid crews before they do work, right? It's their plan when they transition to work. And this takes me back to many years ago in my high school football career. I remember when we were trying to learn how to play football well, and you'd huddle up and do your huddle at the beginning of practice early in the spring, and the coach would come into the huddle with the playbook. And he would hold that playbook in front of us, and he would show us where all we line up, how we execute, where we all go. And that's how we learned, right? We had the plan, we had a visual in front of us. And that's where I see this too. We use it every day. And so we've had, and so we'll start going next into, what we realize from this. Here's a picture of a crew in the drill shack going through a job by design and review. We've gone to a place that even in some of our locations, they put these up on television screens. So while the job is going on, the plan is sitting on the screen that people can reference, right? So we started out with the thought that maybe there'd be 8 to 12 of these that we could do on a rig for routine operations where we had a standard procedure, where we could map it to a job by design. This has been such a success with the crews that we average 40 to 65 a rig. The crews have seen this as a tool that really helps. And they keep on it, and there's a number of people in the room here that I recognize that have experience with using this in operations. I've been amazed at how this has taken off. We've even gotten to a place now that they want to walk around in some of our operations with blank templates that they can draw them up as they go for jobs that don't have a procedure associated with them. They can map it out and say what they do. So it's really become the planning tool of choice in our operations. So what have we realized out of this job by design is, it really operationalizes the procedure by detailing the critical tasks, accountabilities, and position movements, right? So we talk about work as imagined as work as done. I think I heard that reference here earlier today, and Rustin, you may have talked about that, the blue line, black line. This really operationalizes that procedure. Oftentimes I sit there, boy, why did they do that? That's not the way I would expected them to have done that work. Well, this operationalizes that. This takes the procedure and puts it in an operational format, improves immensely our line of fire capability or recognition of line of fire risks and mitigations by de-risking the operations. Crews pre-thinking about where they stand in relation to moving equipment, energy, stored energy, drops, confirms manpower requirements, minimizing exposure. It accelerates knowledge transfer. A great tool for SSE mentoring, right? First time an SSE is on a job, really lays out for him or her expectations, roles and responsibilities, how it looks. Helps our frontline supervisors as really understanding what does good look like. So as you're a supervisor and you're responsible for coaching and mentoring, this is what good looks like. This procedure, this job by design is what you coach to, what you supervise to. It's become a key component in our toolbox talk. So in our 7-step process, the first step is, what is your plan? This is the plan. As I talked about, it's narrowed the gap between work as imagined versus work as performed. Before we started this process, we metric in the shell our high potential events and where we fail safe and where we fail lucky. So failing lucky is where, hey, just by the grace of God, no one got hurt or injured or assets damaged. But where we fell safe is where we had protocols in place to protect ourselves, exclusion zones, isolation for testing. And so we are around 45, 50% around fail safe versus fail lucky. But since the implementation of job by design, we're up at 85% and climbing. So we've really increased the depth of defense in our ability to fail safely. And it's been an excellent source of procedural feedback. We don't realize how bad some of our procedures were, or lacking, I shouldn't say bad, lacking some of our procedures were across the board until we sit down with the crews and we put it on a piece of paper and operationalize it. And once we see the way the crews see it and the way it really goes in order and who does what and where they're actually positioning themselves on the rig floor, it has really been a great feedback into improving the overall procedure. Other benefits, but I'll leave it at that. The last thing I'll say is, what additional applications are we looking to see? So this is a great opportunity for us to do after action reviews. So all of our rigs now, and people are camered up. It's a great opportunity, back to the football analogy, watching the tape. So we can look at the tape, watch the crews work, and compare it to the job by design and see where there are deviations. And oftentimes the crews and supervisors didn't even recognize they were deviating. And how powerful it is to go back and watch the job, compare it against this metric, and either change behaviors or maybe even change the plan. We have also had the opportunity to do this in real time now. So with our real-time operating center in Houston, we can watch the rigs. During our pre-tower meetings, we can have an agreement that, hey, we're going to be doing a job, we're going to be implementing this job by design. Do you mind watching it from Houston? And you have the bat phone, you can call and say, hey, we've seen a significant deviation from the job by design, let's stop, regroup. So we have that opportunity. The other opportunity is, a lot of us are investigating and trialing technology in the rig that really monitors people on the rig floor in addition to moving equipment in exclusion zones. And so this gives the parameters by which we can hand that technology and say, all right, during this step, this is where we expect the people to be in relation to the equipment. So we can use this as a technology aid or a building block by which we can start implementing smart technology out there that really monitors crew movement in relation to the work steps and the design that we have on our job by design. So with that, again, I appreciate the opportunity here to present this. It's we call it job by design simplification. In concept, it's a very simple concept. It's taking the critical steps out of a procedure, putting on a one-page document that helps the frontline crews, the people actually doing the work, the people in harm's way, gives them the best opportunity to operate and do the work error-free, while also building the capacity to fail safely. So with that, again, thank you for your attention and time. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Yes, sir.
Howdy, Joe. It's Grant Cole from Oceaneering. Going back to your wheel, the wagon wheel you had at the beginning.
Yep.
You have goal zero there in the middle. And one of the things we're learning is that goal zero doesn't always equal get you to depth and defense. No. Because it's two different mindsets. You're either allowing people to fail or you're not allowing people to fail. How do you reconcile that in your wagon wheel? And then how do you take the latent conditions that result from goal zero, the blame, shame, and punish culture? How do you remove that so you can get to that learner mindset, you can get to that psychological safety, and most importantly, that fair event handling, which I love the fair event handling, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I think you just answered your question on the last part there. How we transition from the blame and shame, right? So, a lot of us have been there, right? Before I go out doing an investigation crew, and before I even get out there to do the investigation, I ran the crew off that made the mistake. I had the error, right? Shells were expectation. I'm not, and we're like, great job, right? So we transitioned to fair event handling, right? So it's about understanding why did people do what they did. There's still an opportunity and there's still an element for consequence management where people willfully, knowingly violated a rule, right? But most times, 90% of the cases we've found in our time with doing fair event handling, it's a latent condition in the management system that resulted in the error, right? So that's it. First part of your question was around goal zero. It's how you define goal zero. So we've changed our definition of goal zero from zero injuries, right? Zero recordables, trial and derived, recordable rate down to zero. Drove a lot of bad behaviors in our industry, right? I won't go into war stories. I could tell you stories about how we try to manage recordability. Not a good place to be. What we're trying to do is manage, significant injuries and fatalities, level 1, level 2 well control events, right? The things that are really, change people's lives, change the environment, right? So, finger injuries, sticks and pricks, still important. We expect our frontline leaders to manage that. We have the tools in place to manage those. But our focus in goal zero is zero SIFs, serious incidents and fatalities, and zero level 1, 2 well control events. That's what our focus on goal zero is. Thank you. You're welcome.
Hey, Joe. Tim Peplow with ExxonMobil.
Yeah.
Wondering, does this replace the JSA, or is
No.
the JSA in addition to this?
Yeah, JSA is in addition to this. So, the job by design gives us the plan, but that's, as you all know, the plan is implemented in different conditions. Weather conditions, temporary conditions, competency. Some equipment may be working, some equipment may be out of service. So the JSA gives us an opportunity to say, all right, here's the job by design. A lot of the hazards are built into the job by design, but there may be some that are not addressed. So the JSA is still put on top of that to manage and identify specific risks that need to be addressed at the time.
Okay, and I know you talked about the line of fire. Do you integrate the other life-saving rules and actions into there? Are those called out specifically?
Yeah, so line of fire is predominantly the one we look at, but if there's working at heights, that'd be talked about. Lifting and hoisting would be talked about. So yeah, the other life-saving rules would be there as well, but those are line of fire too. I guess now I'm talking about drops, but predominantly line of fire.
Hey, John, this is Keith Crane with
Hi, Keith.
Valaris. Just a quick question around, there at the end, you talked a little bit about, monitoring individuals coming in and out of the red zone.
Yeah.
I know there's software out there for that. Valaris has looked into a lot of that, and so has our customers. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? How crews are accepting that, Big Brother looking over their shoulder, but yet still trying to do the right thing? I mean, how has that worked for you guys?
Yeah, it's early for us, and what I'll tell you is it's all in your implementation strategy, right? So what are you going to do with the information, right? So my experience, if you go out there and put it as it's a job aid to help them protect themselves, it works. If you go out there saying 2 strikes and you're off the crew or off the floor, that does not work, right? So again, it's about the way you implement the program. I find it very valuable. I'm a little frustrated at the ability for us to integrate the technology with the equipment. So when you try to get where you can get equipment, and I know there's issues with it, I understand that, but I'd like to get to a point where you could go ahead and not only modify behaviors with the people, saying when to move in the zone, when to move out of the zone, when's the right time, but also if you could modify the behavior of the equipment. And when you start talking about logic and having something automatically shut down based on the position of a person or another person, it gets very tricky. But to answer your question at the beginning, I think it's how you implement. And where I've seen it implemented as a job aid and a tool to help our crews build behaviors to keep them safe out of the line of fire, it works good. If you take it out there, hey, this is a strict policy. If we catch you twice in a crew in a tower where you've been out of the zone, then there's punitive. It doesn't work. It's not accepted. And it's got to be a tool for the crew, by the crew. It can't be a tool that someone in Houston's monitoring and putting out scorecards on rigs and ranking rigs 1 to 2 on how well they're managing. Because the next thing they start modifying the software, they start high. All of a sudden, the equipment's down 80% of the time for some mysterious reason. So, it's about leaving it for the crews, for them to get the benefit from it.
Any more questions?
Okay, well, great. Hey, I'm here all day, so if you think of things, I'd love to meet you.